Hello, welcome to another one of my yoga sports shorts, short videos just to talk about how yoga can supplement various sports and activities. And this is all about running. So I'm a runner. I've used yoga in the past to help in my training, as part of my training, and it has helped. And you've probably seen loads of stuff out there about yoga for runners, why it's so good. But what I want to do here is go a little bit deeper in the whys. So I'm going to highlight a number of issues that we get within the body when we run, from either marathon running or even sprint running, any injuries we might get, some things that happen to us. And then I'll identify some yoga postures that might help with that particular constraint. And then towards the end, what I'm going to do after I've demonstrated each of these individually for each particular area of the body, at the end, I'm going to try to put a practice together which includes most of those things. And it'll be quite a fluid practice that you might want to just look at and maybe build into part of your own training regime on your rest days, for example, or some downtime. It seemed to work for me. I must admit, I'd been plagued with all sorts of injuries. I've had shin splints. I've still got weak ankles. Plantar fasciitis, really aching back after long runs. So I've pretty much been through it all. But I have found that yoga has not only helped more recently, I'm still running, I'm running injury free. Oh yeah, and I've had the really bad knees as well. I'm running injury free, have been for a while now. But also when I do have an injury, it doesn't take so long to rehab out of it with a fairly consistent yoga practice. So enough of that. You're watching this because you're interested, so I'm going to get straight on into it. So I'm going to start with some of these afflictions, injuries, concerns, maybe hindrances in no particular order. I'm going to start with the IT band. So the IT band is a fibrous tissue that runs all the way down the outside of the legs, and it's basically what helps us to keep upright. Sometimes can get really tight. What I do with the IT band is it's a simple movement. It's from a standing position. It's crossing the legs over and then slowly coming down nice and slowly into a straight leg forward bend, if that's okay for your lower back. If it's not, just gently back off, but find that point where you find a little bit of tension up the side of the body. Okay, so where I am with this is I'm getting a little bit of tension here, just about that TFL, tensor fascia latae, which is that muscle which the IT band is part of. It's not a coffee, apparently. And then find that particular tension and then hang here, breathe into it, probably about 5 breaths, and then change over. And again, cross the legs over, slowly lower down to that point you start to find tension on the side. And you can walk the hands around to go deeper into this, but find that tension and breathe into it and try to soften, release any tightness. That's the IT band. There's a couple of other stretches I'm going to do which also help the IT band, but that's a good one to start off with. Hamstrings. Well, everybody's tight in the hamstrings. All you have to do is sit all day and you'll get tight hamstrings. Classic yoga posture to help hamstrings is downward dog, which is an inverted V, where you come into this position here. And as soon as you come into this, best thing to do, bend one knee, push the opposite heel into the mat, and then pedal through. This really starts freeing up your hamstrings and also your calves, your gastroc muscle and your soleus muscle, particularly the hamstring. So this is a really nice one. This particular posture is part of the flow we're going to be putting into the practice, so you do it quite frequently. Another really good one is extended forward bend, where you, from an upright position, you turn one foot in slightly, so turn the toes out to the side. You step the other foot forwards, so the toes facing forwards. Turn your hips to face forwards, and you have to experiment with your gait here. But with your hips facing forwards, start to come forwards with a forward bend, but keeping the back quite flat. Okay, you can see my back's flat. I'm pivoting forward out of the hips, coming all the way down. Now I'm starting to feel a localized hamstring stretch here. And then when I get to that point of tension, I'll hold here. I can take my hands behind my back, or I can interlace my fingers, pull my arms over the top, whatever I want to do. But breathe into this tension here, keeping this right foot grounded. Okay. Extended forward bend, really good for the hamstrings. Okay, coming all the way out of that. And then again on the other side. Hip flexors. Hip flexors are the muscles which do this to the knee, bring it up. And let's face it, This is what we're doing in running. We're running in the sagittal plane forwards all the time. So these fellas get a lot of work and they get quite tight. And if they get tight and stay tight, particularly if you sit down a lot as well during the week, they'll start to pull on the lower back. And this was my problem after long runs, incredibly achy lower back because my hip flexors were too tight. So great posture for tight hip flexors, crescent moon, and it looks like this. So don't worry, I'm going to be covering all of these off in a flow at the end of this particular session. So this position with the knee grounded here, right knees pointing directly forward over the toes, pull your tummy button in. This will just tilt the pelvis in the right orientation to support the lower back. Take the hands up nice and high, and then lean forwards. And you can see this hip flexor now in extension, and it's a really glorious stretch. If you do anything at all in your stretch regime, this would be the one for me. It's so good. Okay, coming back to hamstrings, because what we will do is come into a half split. We'll take our hips backwards now, keeping this right foot grounded. And then as we start to lengthen, extend this right leg, lowering our chest down onto that leg. You'll again feel a really nice localized stretch of the hamstring here. So those two really complement each other. Coming back up. Okay, next on the list are ankles. So at an early age, I went over on one ankle, sprained the ankle, stretched the ligaments. It's been weak ever since, because ligaments are like springs. Once you stretch them beyond that point, then they'll stay stretched. They'll never come back to where they should be. And so what we have to do is build the muscles around there to compensate. So with ankles, I do a lot of this. I really start working my arches to building up the strength in the ankles. And it doesn't take long to feel that happening. The other thing with ankles is balance. So we do a lot of balance in yoga. This is tree pose. Excuse me. This is tree pose when you find some balance and you can hold there for about 20 seconds and feel what's going on in the ankle. If it's quite stable, good balance, good ankle. Going on to this side, my ankle is wobbling now because I don't have the tightness in the ligaments. So I do this a lot on this foot to build up the muscles, okay? And you can do all sorts of things in this posture to make it more challenging as you see fit, okay? And then try to do 20 seconds in a balanced posture. This will allow you to figure out the stability you've got in your ankles. Plantar fasciitis. I had this, it's horrible. If you've got it, you've got my sympathy. But bearing in mind, it will clear up. It absolutely will. For me, it was downward dogs, definitely. Part of my regular 2 to 3 times a week yoga practice was downward dogs. I tried cortisone injections, I tried orthotics, I tried everything. But it's only when I started my regular yoga practice that it disappeared. But another one for plantar fasciitis is this, sitting on the toes, sitting back on the heels, toes are bent, stretch out the fascia here. So with my story with plantar fasciitis was a tear across the plane of the sole of the foot, so that when I slept, the scar tissue laid down, it healed over, but in the wrong orientation. So when I woke up and I bent my foot, the scar tissue pulled and it was intensely painful. But getting regular movement in the right plane of the tissues will allow the scar tissue to reform in the right orientation. Okay, so plantar fasciitis. It's really good for your toes, this is. Bearing in mind, both this posture and this, think about when you push off with your foot, your big toes quite instrumental in that pushing off. So if you've got really good strength in your toe knuckles, that makes for efficient running. Okay, you might have a really expensive big Adidas or Nike or whatever it is wrapped around it, but it's the toe that's doing the work. So this is all good stuff. Knees. Okay, that's quite a big affliction, or it was for me. Knee pain when I started out running on training runs. I thought that was it, that's the end of my running. But all it was my quads were misaligned. Okay, so when you run, depending upon your gait, depending upon where you're tight, because you're not quite balanced in your hips, your four quads, your four vasty muscles, which come all the way down the front of the thigh, connect onto the patellar tendon below the kneecap. If one of those vasty muscles is overdeveloped because of the way you run, it will cause that patella to track unevenly, which will cause you pain. It caused me pain. So how I got around this, again, yoga, I'm doing a lot of lunges. I'm doing a lot of lunges with the knee, you can't quite see it, but the knee pointing over the toes, okay? That's a clue. When you come into a lunge, see where your knee goes. If it goes out, tight abductors. If it goes in, tight adductors, weak abductors. Try to get it going forwards, okay? And a great way of doing that, if you don't want to do lunges, find a flat wall, sit your back into the wall, push into the back of the wall, knees are 90-degree bent, flexed, rest your hands here, even watch the telly, do it for about 40 seconds to a minute to 2 minutes. You can feel the vasty muscles start to really start working, start developing in the right way. It's really good for your quads. Okay, weak core. Why is that important? Well, when we run, we want the hips to be quite stable. Okay, so all the work's coming out the femurs. If the hips are going like that, because the core's a bit there, then, you know, it's going to cause lots and lots of imbalances. Core is good functional stability. Core is good for really good efficient breathing. So in yoga, we've got a couple of nice things we do in yoga. Yogi bikes is one of them. And when you do this, really plant the lumbar spine into the mat. That's why we do it. The other one I would recommend is lumbar spine pushed into the mat, pulling the rope down. So you're working your internal and external obliques down the sides, okay? The other one is reverse curls. So lumbar spine really getting protected here. The reason I do these with the lumbar spine is when you do sit-ups, however you do sit-ups, whatever it is, a lot of work going on here, a lot of risk here. If you do a load of sit-ups and you get tight in the neck, pain in the lower back, you want to try a different sort of sit-up, okay? Maybe with the lumbar spine here and legs passing. A really good one, legs both upright, lumbar spine in the ground, pulsing forward. This really localized rectus abdominis. Great for core. Okay, moving on, upper back. So we run like that. We're slightly kyphotic, rounded shoulders. When we work, when we drive, when we read, we're slightly kyphotic. We need to get our shoulder blades coming back. We need to stretch pec minor muscle to get that really nice sort of ability to stretch back. It doesn't necessarily affect your running, but what running can do is make you more kyphotic. If you're more kyphotic, you get imbalance again in your axial body, in the spine. So it's really good to be aware of that. So a lot of the postures we'll do is this: interlace the fingers, stretch the arms out, stretch out through pec minor, bring the shoulder blades together. Okay, the next one, calves, shin splints, Achilles tendonitis, all that type of stuff. Okay, generally, possibly overuse, ill-fitting shoes. Yoga's not really going to come in there and pow, kick it out the park. But there is a great stretch that I found called, well, it's not really called anything, it's the slow it. It's a soleus stretch. So before we go there, soleus is the muscle just below the gastroc muscle, the one that is connected to the Achilles, that part of the muscle there, okay? Really great way to localize the soleus. Come onto your knees, and then with the left foot here, plant the toe or the ball of the foot just behind the right knee. You might need to move this around. This is depends on how long your tibia is. But when you find that position, then rest your chest down onto that knee. And as you move that foot around, you'll find a really localized stretch onto that soleus, that part of the lower calf, and hold there. Leaning onto that, really stretching that out. Okay, and then go the other side. So again, it's all about movement in the ankles, come up to the toes, all that type of stuff. Okay, finally, ankles again, coming into a hero pose, which is onto your heels, and then taking the hands backwards, leaning backwards, lifting the knees off of the mat. This really stretches the front of the ankles. This is dorsiflex. Okay. And release. And one other movement, which is a side lunge, which is something like this, using the hands for support and then walking all the way across. As you see, as I walk across, I flex this ankle, lift the toes up, nice stretch through gastroc, soleus, and hamstrings. And at the same time, the hips are slightly rotated out. Now, you don't need to rotate your hips out in running, but if you don't rotate your hips out, which is a natural movement, it can create imbalances in your hips, in your pelvis. So this is why this is quite nice. Okay. And that's a list of some of the areas in running, in runners, as runners might come across in the course of our running life, and how yoga can address potential imbalances in those areas. And why imbalance is bad is because it does actually affect our running gait. If we are predisposed in any way, it will affect how we run. It will affect the efficiency of how we run. Okay, the other thing I haven't mentioned is when we lift the arms up, try to think of the ribs opening like an accordion and breathe the lungs into that rib cage. This won't improve your VO2 max, but it will loosen your intercostal muscles. And when you are really breathing heavily, you can really expand the rib cage to create more space for the lungs. I say this from personal experience. I've changed the way I breathe in my running. I breathe a lot more efficiently now than I ever did. So that might be the subject of another video. So as I said, we're going to pull these things together into a nice sort of flowing movement. And what I'm going to do before we do that is show you a thing called a vinyasa flow. So don't worry about the term vinyasa. The flow is a sequence of yoga postures pushed together in a flowing sequence where we can breathe nice and steadily through, and they'll take the body through the sagittal plane. So just bear with me. This is how it will look. We start in a standing position, lift the hands up, bend the knees, float forward on an exhale, hands come onto the shins, inhale, straighten the legs, lift the chest, look forwards, bend the knees, put the hands down, inhale, walk back into a high press up plank position. If you want to mix it up, you can do some high planks, low planks to get the arms really working here. And then when you're ready, come down onto the mat, tops of the feet on the mat, inhale, lift the chest forwards and up, lift up through the crown of the head. This is really working that trapezius and lifting up, stretching the pec minor muscles as you pull the shoulders back. Exhale down, push up into tabletop, tuck the toes in, lift up into a downward dog. As you come into downward dog, bend and pedal the legs here. Think about gastroc, think about your hamstrings. Nice stretchy movements. Look up between the hands, little jump to the top of the mat, bent knee forward bend, roll up to standing. So that's a vinyasa flow. Another one is a downward dog into sort of an upward dog or a plank and back to a downward dog. It's just about sequencing movement together. So I'm going to try and introduce these things with some of these movements. So to start off, I would start off with a vinyasa flow. So come up, inhale up, exhale down, bent knees. Inhale, legs straight, back up or chest up, look forwards. Exhale, bend the knees. Inhale back into a plank. Exhale all the way down, knees, chest, chin. Tops of the feet on the mat. Inhale up into cobra. Exhale, come down. Inhale to tabletop. Tuck the toes in. Exhale into downward dog. Pedal the legs here. Stretch out the legs. And then look up and walk to the top of the mat. Come into the top of the mat. Roll all the way up. Come up onto your toes and heel. 5 times. Really stretching up into the soleus muscle, gastroc muscle active. Be working those arches. Okay, and then crossing the right leg over, slowly rolling down to a straight leg forward bend. Finding some tension in your IT band and holding and breathing here, nice and slowly. I'm not going to stay for the whole 5 breaths. You can do this once you've worked this out if you want to follow this practice. Coming all the way back up, come back to standing, inhale the hands up, lift the rib cage, breathe into the lungs, exhale the hands down, cross the legs over, IT stretch on the other side, slowly roll down. Find the tension, breathe into it. So I won't stay here for the 5 breaths, which is optimum in any stretching regime, about 30 seconds if you can. Slowly come back up. It really depends how much time you've got. And then back into a standing position. Inhale the hands up nice and high. Push into the mat with the right foot. Lift the left leg off of the mat. Plant the sole of the foot either into the thigh or into the calf. Bring the hands down onto your chest or take the hands up nice and wide and bring the palms together. Find the balance here. And this one, I would recommend you stay for 20 seconds or 30 seconds. Just check where you are. Work out how stable you are in that ankle. And I'll come out of that quite quickly, but like Blue Peter, this is one I did earlier. Push into the mat with the left foot, float the arms up, maybe bring the right leg up to the same place or different. Check out the balance. Always an option here to try different types of balance postures. This is standing pigeon, where we've got external rotation in the right hip as well, which is always good. Okay. So that's ticked that one off. Come all the way down. Okay, from here, bend the knees, come all the way down. Little vinyasa. Inhale back into plank. Bring the shoulders on top of the wrists. Maybe a couple of warming up planks here, low planks. Drop onto your knees, chest, chin, tops of the feet on the mat. Inhale up into cobra. Exhale down. Inhale up into tabletop, tuck your toes in, lift up into downward dog. Okay, this time we're going to step the left foot forward between the hands and come to an upright position. From this position, rotate that right heel down, straighten out the left leg. Start to square the hips, start leaning forwards, nice flat through the back. Come all the way down until you feel tension in this calf. Okay, even if your knees bent and you find tension, hold there. Wherever you are on this, don't worry about what it looks like. Go for the tension. If you're okay, take the hands behind the back, interlace the fingers maybe, bring the arms over the top. Whatever you've got, you don't have to, it's just something else to do here. You can simply just take the hands behind the back and rest them there. The tension is what we're looking for. Drop the hands down in front of you. Step to the top, step to the back, change legs, rotating that left heel down, straighten out or come upright, straighten out through that right leg, square the hips, grab hold of the hands and come forwards. Finding that tension here. Again, another 5 breaths if you want. More than 2 breaths, okay? It takes about 12 seconds for the nerve receptors in the body, in the tendons, in the belly of the muscle to release with the breath, okay? Drop the hands down. Turn the left foot in line. Step back into a downward dog. Pedal the legs here. Inhale, come all the way through to plank. And this time, dropping the hips down, pulling the tummy button in, lift up through the crown of the head. Exhale, come back to dog. Bend the left knee, drop the left knee onto the mat. Step the right foot forward between the hands. Inch that left knee back a little bit. Come to an upright position. Inhale the hands up as you pull the tummy button in. Exhale, lean forwards into this lunge. Okay, this is a great one to work your upper body as well, or your tightness in the front in your body. Take the hands behind the ears and then push the chest forwards, pull the elbows back as you lean forward into this lunge. Okay, lift the hands up, float the hands all the way forwards. Okay, hamstring stretch, take the hips backwards as you keep this right foot grounded, straightening out through the right leg. Lean onto that right thigh with your chest. Feel that stretch. Come forwards. Again, I'm not holding for the length that you would hold on these. I'm just giving you a guide. And then tucking the left toes in, lift up the left knee, push back into downward dog. A little vinyasa. Inhale, come through into plank. Exhale, knees, chest, chin. Tops the feet on the mat. Inhale, up into cobra. Exhale, down. Inhale to tabletop, tucking the toes in. And exhale into downward dog. Dropping the right knee to the mat, stepping the left foot forwards. Okay, inching that right knee back a bit. Come to an upright position, pulling your tummy button in. Inhale, the hands up. Exhale, lean into this lunge. Okay, this time take the hands behind the back, interlace the fingers. Push the arms away, lift up in the chest, look forwards, and lean deeper into this. Stretch those hip flexors. Inhale the hands up. Exhale, fold forwards. Hands either side of that left foot. Start walking the hips backwards or taking the hips backwards. Grounded through that left foot. Stretch out through this left leg, half splits. Start to lean your body weight down onto that leg. Feel that localized hamstring stretch. Your hammers will love you for this. They'll be saying, at last, they found yoga. It might not be, but you never know. Okay, take that stretch off. Now, what we're going to do now is drop onto our knees and come to an upright position, which is a thunderbolt. And we're going to, this one I haven't described, it's working the quads. It's, if you can, lower down onto your heels and then come up. You can do this with the arms up and float the arms down. If this is too much on your knees, that's okay. But again, it's localized, real good movement of your vasty muscles here. It's like a bit like that stationary one where we're sat against the wall. Okay, and then come back down. Incidentally, if you can't sit back on your heels because your quads are so tight and you're up here, if you get a few books and plant the books under your bum to the point where you can sit back, stay there, not in this practice, but do this a few nights a week in front of the telly. And then after a couple of weeks, take a book out and go deeper. Over time, you will be down here and you will have full range of movement in your quads. Okay, from here, take the hands behind you, lean back, lift up the knees to get that really nice dorsiflex. Okay, good. Come forwards. Tuck the toes under, sit the hips back onto the heels. Find the work going on now. Real good stretch into that plantar fascia area. Lift the hands up, turn and look up, maybe track the arms backwards. Stay here as long as you want. I'm going to come forwards. I'm going to come to face you. I'm going to come into a side lunge here. So with my right knee bent on the ball of my right foot, left leg is out nice and long, extended, ankle flex, toes pointing up. Using the hands for support. Walk all the way around. And backwards and forwards. Okay. Just keeping that stability, not putting too much pressure. If this is really hard on your knees, and I understand that, another way of doing this is coming into a wide leg forward bend, bending your knees, gliding the legs back like this. We're still getting a little bit of external rotation in our hips, which is what we need. And it's actually, this is a little filler, if you like, of vinyasa. And when we've done a few of those, come all the way to the front. So you can come down on your backs for some core. So bringing your knees into chest, massage your lower back. Straighten out the left leg, keep hold of the right knee. Keeping your lumbar spine pushed into the mat. Hands behind the ears, turn to the right. Inhale here, and you only move on the exhale. So as you exhale, pull your tummy button in even more. Inhale here, and then move again. Like a train, but make sure you move on the exhale, which allow you to pull your tummy down because the diaphragm's just shot up. And you really can ground through that lumbar arch. Okay, really effective way of building your core up. But this is also working your hip flexors. So it's not the best. Anyway, do as many of those as you want. Shoot the feet up. Now this will work the core, not the hip flexors as well. Hands out either side. Pulse. Really feel the lumbar spine pushing into the mat as you pulse. Again, do as many of these as you like. Maybe start pulling the rope down to get the obliques working. You'll feel it on the side of your core. And then maybe bending the knees, hands down, and reverse curls. Putting the knees up towards the head. And then to come out of that, I would encourage you to lie down, bring your knees up into your chest, take your arms out nice and wide, and do some twists to the side as you bring the knees down to both sides. Just loosen off, if you can, the core. And then slowly come to an upright position now, just to finish off. Just going to show you something. So in this seated staff position, Dandasana, where our legs are quite flat on the floor, our ankles are flexed. If your hamstrings are tight, you'll be looking like this, okay? It's not a problem. It just gives you an idea that you've got tight hamstrings. If you're like this and you think, yeah, my hamstrings are okay, keeping your lower back quite flat, not rounded through the back, lean forwards, nice and flat through the back, reach your hands forwards. So normal range of movement is your fingertips are either on top of your toes or just behind them. Okay, that's quite marked restriction, and that restriction is probably through tightness through gastroc, hamstrings, spinal erectors, and possibly the upper back. It's just a guide. It's nothing to be concerned about, but it just gives you an idea of how you can improve your flexibility. And let's face it, if we've all got normal range of movement, then we will run efficiently. Okay, so that concludes this particular yoga short. Thanks for following if you managed to stay to the end. Again, you can move these fluid movements up as any way you wish. You can pick and choose any one of those stretches if you like to build into your training regime. I just would encourage you to give them a go and see how you are. And actually, if you've got some other stuff you do that you find really effective, please drop it on an email to me, because I'll be more than happy to build that into what I'm doing here. And what I'll do as well is start looking at putting together a yoga sport short for running, but more about the breath and the focus and how we efficiently breathe, because that as well can be a bit of a game changer for people that have never really understood or never really been taught the nature of the breath and how to breathe. It sounds daft, doesn't it? Because we all breathe, but how do we breathe? That's the question. Okay, thanks for your attention. If you like this video, give us a like, that'd be fantastic. And if you want to come to any one of my yoga classes, check out the website, check out my booking page, you'll be more than welcome. What the stuff I do here is what I do. I just love yoga, but I only teach yoga that actually works. It's very popular. So thanks again, take care, bye-bye.